Welcome everyone to the November 16th City Council public hearing. First up is a public hearing, and the only up is a public hearing on an ordinance adopting the dusk to dawn permitted overnight sleeping pilot program. City manager. Nope.
Thank you. Over the last several years, the city has tried a number of programs to address immediate homeless needs while continuing to work towards long-term solutions for permanent housing. Tonight's public hearing is an opportunity for the public to weigh in on a pilot program that would allow for sanctioned places to sleep on specific managed sites between the hours of 8 p.m. and 7 a.m. Council action on this ordinance is scheduled for next Monday night, November 23rd.
Thank you, City Manager. So I've opened the public hearing, and we have 8 people signed up to speak. First up is, I've got to read this thing. Never mind. Those wishing to speak during the public hearing must submit a completed request to speak form to the information desk prior to the beginning of the public hearing. When you come to the podium, please give your name, city of residence, and for Eugene residents, your ward if known. You will have 3 minutes to comment. There are lights on the timer. The red light indicates the end of 3 minutes. So first up is Betty Snowden, followed by Sue Saralupe. Betty. You can choose between the stand or the sit, whichever makes you comfortable.
Well, good evening to the mayor, Kitty Piercy, and the city council. First, I'd like to just
Would you introduce yourself, Betty, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Betty Snowden, Eugene, Oregon. And first, we say to the Mayor Kitty Piercy and the City Council, first I'd like to just compliment you for your efforts in helping the homeless. And I think the Dusk to Dawn is a great idea, and I would like to see the city adopt the Dusk to Dawn pilot program. You know, one of the biggest complaints I hear from the homeless is having their sleep interrupted with the fear of being arrested. And this should get rid of this complaint and provide the needed temporary, and I say temporary shelter because we want permanent shelter for these folks. This is only a temporary solution to the path of permanent shelter, and hopefully make some of these spots, I'm just hoping that these spots are safe for both men and women and that their needs are provided for. So I'm totally in support, and I'm hoping that you will adopt this beautiful, wonderful program. And again, I congratulate you for all the work that you're doing in helping the homeless, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Next is Sue Saralupe, followed by Jennifer Frenzer-Knowlton.
My name is Sue Saralupe, and I have been living in George Brown's ward for over 20 years. I am also the clinic manager of Occupy Medical. This Sunday was very chilly.
Speak up, Sue.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm too tall.
I know. You just got to...
Okay. This Sunday was very chilly. I bundled up to serve at OM with 3 layers of clothing, from tights to thermal socks to polar fleece vest. On top of that, I proudly wore my Occupy Medical sweatshirt. We put together the metal poles that make up our exterior tents with the help of both volunteers and unhoused visitors. Yet, even with all this help, my bony little fingers could not bend enough to properly lift the totes. At the end of the day, with the soggy tents hung up to dry and the bits of the infernally prolific pieces of our medical equipment put away, I sat by the fireplace sipping a hot bowl of barley soup. I could warm up in the comfort of my own home. Too many of the patients that we serve were left behind and do not have this luxury. I am so grateful that you are going to be voting on approval of the Dusk to Dawn ordinance. It is a logical choice, leaving citizens that you have vowed to protect out in the cold with their subsistence made illegal is illogical, and it is in violation of the vows that you made to protect all citizens. I am grateful to be part of a movement, and even in a very small way, that helps every citizen in this fire city, and it makes me proud. And if there's anything else I can do to assist, I am happy to do so.
Thank you. Jennifer Frenzer Knowlton is next, followed by Michael Kerrigan.
I'm Jennifer Frenzer Knowlton, and I'm in Betty Taylor's ward. I wanted to announce that homelessness is the theme of the International Human Rights Day hosted by the Eugene Human Rights Commission, and you're all invited. It's the evening of December 10th, and we'll be featuring Occupy Medical and the human rights work that they're doing in the city. I support the Dusk to Dawn with some changes that I recommend, expanding the times so that people are unpacking and packing in the daylight instead of in the dark. Other supports I think that are necessary to make the Dusk to Dawn pilot work include right now understanding what land is available and getting the staff to help folks with understanding potential spots to have the rest stops, the Dusk to Dawn spots. Also, storage and sanitation will need to be paid for by the city. These spots won't have necessarily nonprofits rushing up to be able to pay for sanitation the way the rest stops do right now. As a matter of fact, in order to expand rest stops, I think we need more help with funding sanitation, bathrooms, and the dumpsters. I also think that in terms of the administrative rules, you should staff should check in with the current hosts of rest stops and other places where people are camping, like the St. Vinny stops, to make sure that the administrative rules will be helpful to the folks who are trying to spend the night there. And I think that we should expand car camping because there is going to be a certain amount of pressure for people to get to stay in these spots. But if people have cars and could be camping in their cars in designated areas around the city, that would relieve the pressure on the current rest stops, which all have wait lists, and on this Dusk to Dawn spots that you're suggesting. And Wednesday night, we're having a neighborhood-style meeting, a town hall, that will focus on this topic, the Dusk to Dawn, and where to situate them. So I hope you all can attend. That's going to be at First United Church this coming Wednesday evening.
Thank you. Michael Kerrigan is next, followed by Wayne Martin.
Good evening. My name is Michael Kerrigan. I live and work in Ward 7. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of CALC and the Nightingale Health Sanctuary. We strongly support the passage of the ordinance that designates location for the Dusk to Dawn sleeping in Eugene, and we thank you, Mayor, councilors, and city staff for putting forth this proposal. This will help meet the emergency needs to provide safe and legal places for people to sleep this winter. For example, at CALC, I just ran into a person on our porch tonight who didn't have a place to go, a person in a wheelchair. However, I'm asking at this time, in terms of the safe and, excuse me a second, asking that the time frame be changed in this proposed ordinance so that folks seeking a safe place to sleep spend the least time possible in the rain and cold. The ordinance requires that people arrive after 8 p.m. and depart from the campsite by 7 a.m. This means folks will be setting up and packing up in the dark. At 7, there are no practical places for people to go and get warm at that early hour, so it would be great if the mandatory departure time be extended to at least 8 a.m. or better yet, 9. In addition, we feel strongly that folks be allowed to set up their sleeping area before dark, even if they're not allowed to stay and bunk until 8 p.m. In previous council testimony regarding rest stops, I've urged that they be established in every city ward and this should be the case for the dusk to dawn camping locations as well. Closely connected with this, in addition to providing safe places to sleep, it would be great if the city could provide lockers for folks to store their possessions. This may cost the city some money, but I think it's money well spent. And it would be great if the city could appropriate more funds to support the other non-traditional shelter options, like expanding the chiropractic program and helping out the rest stops some more. So in addition to tapping into St. Finney's, I urge city staff to take advantage of the expertise developed by Opportunity Village Eugene, community supported shelters, and the Nightingale Health Sanctuary, and see how we all can make the Dusk to Dawn program as successful as we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Wade Martin is next, followed by Tracy Jocelyn.
Good evening. I'm Wayne Martin. Recently, due to marital considerations, I'm fairly newly married. We moved. We moved from George Brown's district, whom I'll miss, to George Polling's district. We live over in the Harlow area. That's exciting. However, I just want to make an important point, and that is focusing now and only at this point on the hours that you've listed for dusk to dawn. There isn't anything anybody can do at 7 or 9 or 8 or 10 that's much different at any of those hours. I work a lot with camps that are both sanctioned and unsanctioned, just as a helper. And take it from me, there is no threat to letting somebody at all sleep in the outdoors until 9 or 9:30 in the morning, which is a normal time for homeless people to start their day. Likewise, there's no additional threat for giving them a few more hours in the evening. It's dark, it's cold, and we all know it. So I think I'm just imploring you, can you give us something for Christmas? What a beautiful gift to go along with the other provisions you've already come up with. What a beautiful gift to let them come a little earlier and sleep a little later. Pretty much in consistency with their hours. I think that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Tracy Jocelyn is next, followed by Tara Williams.
Good evening. My name is Tracy Jocelyn. I live in Claire's Ward right now at River Road and Northwest Expressway at Nightingale Health Sanctuary Rest Stop. We will be moving the first week of December back to Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard behind Lane County Behavioral Health. You all allowed for us to operate a sanctioned camp for 20 to 30 homeless people. We are very thankful for this opportunity to have shelter and community. We manage ourselves and we are successful. We would like to offer a dusk to dawn site at our rest stop. I support this pilot program 100%. If we are going to do it, let's do it with further open minds and compassion. With the town hall meeting Wednesday, we can endorse neighborhood groups to take the lead in their neighborhoods. I love the idea YIMBY, yes, in my backyard. Change the paradigm. Homeless people are good neighbors. People who are safe while they're sleeping are very cooperative and appreciative. And no residents and no schools, that's a good parameter. But homeless people are generally the best neighbors you could get. Which brings me to troublemakers who also need a place, maybe a little further away, maybe a little more space. If people have safety, they get to think. If they're out seeking survival, it's just spinning your wheels. There are many compassionate people who would help. We need monetary support. I highly recommend people needing shelter be involved in their own survival. Put people to task and they will step up. Prove that at the dining room. We had homeless volunteers and it gave people a sense of purpose. St. Vincent de Paul's awesome. Let's take our time if we need to and make the most out of this we can. Maybe 10 camps. We definitely need a women's safe camp, which somebody just reminded me. We need a place for people that are higher maintenance. We talked about that at the Winter Solutions. That was like our number one thing, have a place to send people who need extra help because we're not trained.
Tara Williams is next, followed by Donna Riddle.
Good evening, Tara Williams, former Eugene resident, now live in Springfield. At the previous public forum I attended, City Council announced that it would request that Governor Brown declare a state of emergency. And it said that she responded that we need to exhaust all of our resources before we move on. So here we are, back at square one, and I feel like I'm going crazy watching history repeat itself. The dusk to dawn proposal sounds a lot like proposals we've heard before. First is the limited hours. What about those who are sick? When you sleep outside, you find yourself prone to an array of ailments. Or how about those who simply cannot wander around all day in comparison to the average healthy person? Why are you so gung-ho about vacating people off of parcels of land that are likely unused or unseen by the general population? The language stating that the proposal will only apply to city-approved sites is the most maddening part. While activists make efforts year-round, the city stalls until the cold weather is already here. These same advocates roll up their sleeves to find acceptable parcels of land, which is usually nimbied out by the locals or rejected by the city for arbitrary reasoning. We've seen this before. The approved sites will only work for some, and the rest will still be at risk. It's time to try something different ideas that respect the existence of all. And I have a crazy one that just might work. To put an immediate moratorium on the camping ban. Not limit it between the hours of 8 p.m. to 7 a.m. and not for pockets of approved land that will be approved God knows when. You can help legalize survival.
Last up, Donna Riddle.
Donna Riddle, former Eugene resident, now living in Springfield. I do intake at Occupy Medical. On Sunday, we had 53 patients. Many were suffering from being out in the rain. I've been in the rain in that tent for the last 4 Sundays, drying tents afterwards. And I'm cold, and I'm miserable. But I know how privileged I am because I have a warm place that I can go to after I finish hanging up the tents. I think that we're already in the middle of November. When you're going to act next week, it's the end of November. Winter is here, folks. We need to do something to help people. One of our patients is going through radiation on the streets every day, an hour of radiation therapy and living on the streets. We have a patient in a wheelchair on Sunday that broke my heart. He'd been in and out of the hospital, in and out of the emergency room. He had serious issues. He was in a wheelchair and he had no shelter. The mission wouldn't take him because they don't have facilities for people in wheelchairs. Please, people, do more than a moratorium. If you're going to have a moratorium, please allow people a decent chance to survive, not after dark and before dawn. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to close the public hearing. A couple comments. I want to thank everybody who comes and keeps pushing us. That's a good thing. I'm going to speak at a legislative committee on housing tomorrow to try to work on the issues that we've brought up over time about homelessness and housing and the needs here in our community. This week, Speaker Kotek is coming here. We're going to meet with her and talk about these issues as well. That's on Thursday, and you are all invited. Thrive. We have a budget committee meeting at the same time. I don't know how that's going to work, but I appreciate very much the work that's being done on that. And I actually really appreciate that the county has stepped up to put Nightingale back on the mental health facility site. That's a very good thing. It would be good to say thank you a lot for that. So just saying that, not to us, to the county, say it to the county. And I want you to know that the Poverty and Homeless Board, that's all of us, but under the county auspice, is working on a site for people, a low bar site for people who are still working on addiction and other issues to get them into a site facility. So we're working in every place we can think of. Tomorrow I go to the housing board and I meet with the governor to keep this conversation going, and then I testify. We're going to keep going and going and going until we make some real movement on this issue. But I don't want to undervalue the prodding that you all give on a regular basis. It's important. It keeps things moving. It's hard, and so your push is important. So thank you. Any other comments, Councilor Surratt?
There.
And Councilor Zelenka. And George Brown.
Thank you, everyone who spoke and folks who came but didn't choose to speak. Just to respond to some of the comments. So I serve on the Human Services Commission, and today at that meeting we did reallocate funds from the contingency to winter strategies. So it was a total of $55,000. Some of that is in anticipation that the council will adopt this ordinance and to help support some staff at certain sites as well as sanitation facilities. And $5,000 of that, I believe, was also in an effort to be able to provide more car camping sites. So we have opened that ordinance up quite wide in terms of where car camping is allowed, and now what I'm hearing is the limitation is the ability to provide the sanitation that's required for each car camping site, because the individual whose home or business it is may not be able to carry that cost. So I do think there might be an opportunity, and I haven't had a chance to speak with anyone at St. Vincent de Paul about this, but they might consider, because they manage the car camping program, opening up the idea of donations specifically for those kinds of sanitation facilities. But I don't want to tell them how to run their business. So, we are definitely consulting with social service agencies about the operational pieces of this ordinance. And the time frames that were chosen, we haven't had a chance to discuss as a council why these time frames. It may be an operational limitation in terms of staffing if it's a site that requires some staff for security or just to make sure folks are okay. But I do think this council can look at those time frames when we discuss this in a week and look at whether or not we should reconsider the time frames there. So that's what I wanted to share. Thanks, everyone, for coming down and helping us make this decision.
Councilor Zelenka?
Yeah, thank you all for coming down, and thank you for respectfully prodding us and pushing us. I agree with the mayor. Dusk to Dawn should feel like deja vu all over again, because it was the original rest stop idea. That's where rest stops came from. It was supposed to be Dusk to Dawn, but they morphed into camping sites. So now we're back to where we were before and talking about places to sleep from dusk to dawn. I heard what you said about the hours, and I think that's something we should look at and understand it fully. Mr. City Manager, it says in here that you'll adopt administrative rules for governing the use of this particular one site as a pilot. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are with regard to number of people and garbage and toilets, and if the administrative rules around rest stops and OVE are in the same kind of context that you're thinking about. So limiting the number of people and requiring sanitation and garbage supervision.
Yeah, I think what seems to have worked well, and I do believe has worked well, are current rest stops. OVE's been also a good model. And so we would want to reproduce or replicate all those successes that have occurred to date. So,
okay, yeah, because I think we came upon or created a good formula for success that allowed us to be able to have the rest stops and OVE to be successful. As far as car camping, my understanding is the problem is more about available spaces and places to be able to have car camping as it is opposed to sanitation or money or anything like that. There's just not enough places for people that people have volunteered to have car camping. And so if you know of any spots or hear of any or think that you might, please let us know or let those people know and ask them to volunteer their spaces. But as far as I know, it's the critical shortage of spaces that are preventing us from really expanding the car camping program.
And I guess I just want to add that my understanding of the meeting on Wednesday with Thrive is really about neighborhoods stepping up and trying to find their own places to have people have rest stops. And so I look avidly forward to that, because I think the most success that we can have is when neighborhoods find their own places that they say this will be a good spot, and we would all agree. And I know, at least I've heard, I've heard in the Jefferson area that neighbors have been meeting with going door to door to try to be sure that it's okay with the neighbors. So I think there's some really good conversations having, and I want to be really respectful of that and hope that that's going to help us move the dial. So thank you all so much. And I also want to say that we're going to do this the way we have to. We have the hearing tonight. Next week we have the work session. We'll have the work session. We'll make a decision, and hopefully right after the decision we'll have a place to move.
That's all right.
Mayor, may I get in the queue?
That's my goal. So anyway, thank you all.
Mike wants to be the queue after George.
And George, I'm sorry, George Brown. Excuse me.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, everyone, for coming down. I agree with you. I think we need to change the hours. It's really not practical, not in the winter anyway. I mean, summertime, that's one thing, but wintertime, it's the weather's too bitter, it's too dark, it's too, you're kind of forcing people to go out with no place to go and wander around for a few hours. And it doesn't seem like a good idea. So we'll work on that and change that. I believe that we will. I think there's probably enough support for that. I think there should be a storage provision. I think it's unrealistic to think that people are, you've got a safe place to sleep, but you have to lug all your stuff with you all the time, all over town. That's really inconvenient so what are people doing? Well, they're looking for work. They're looking to access benefits that they're eligible for. They're visiting Occupy Medical on Sunday and other health providers other days. So I think it's really impractical to think that people are going to lug all their stuff around, because that's what they do now, and there needs to be an improvement, I believe. Also, sanitation facility, dumpsters and restrooms are absolutely critical, and perhaps that should be paid for with some of the human service funds that were been made available for stuff like this that were referenced by Councilor Syrat. Anyway, I think that what the council needs to see is a current list of city surplus property, like we did. If city manager, can we get a current list of city properties and anything that's listed as surplus property? Because we kind of did that, before we set up Opportunity Village, and there was, and then that whole list was culled down to another list that met certain criteria. But maybe if we could see the whole list again, I'm sure I'm familiar with lots of those sites, but so it wouldn't be a big thing to me to look at the list and see which ones were unsuitable and which ones were promising. But that would, if we could get that sometime soon, that would really be helpful. And I'm going to ask the county for a similar type of list, because it seems like they want to be more involved too. So we need several of them, really. We need a whole bunch of them. Thank you.
And Councillor Clark?
Thank you, Mayor. When originally proposed, the original camp was proposed as, I'm sorry, I'm having a little feedback here. The original camp was proposed as a permanent camp, and the rest stops were proposed as temporary, much like this. They've evolved over time, and so I'm wondering if we might have someone from staff explain the difference between the rest stops that we passed before and this opportunity.
City Manager?
Yeah, the difference is when those were put into place, as Alan mentioned, the original concept was what we're talking about now, but through that process, they did evolve into what we now have as rest stops, in which there are up to 30 people that are authorized at some of these rest stops, and they have to be approved through the city process. And in those particular rest stops, people can continue to maintain their site there around the clock. And so not have to pack up all their equipment and move in the morning. This, what's fundamentally different is that a person can come in the evening. If there's space available, they then are able to set up their site, and then in the morning at whatever time that becomes, and they pick up their all their equipment and belongings, and then move off of the site during the day, and then they can come back in that evening and occupy the site as well again.
Councillor Clark?
Yes, one last question. What would be the difference then in what we started with before and what this may or may not evolve into?
Well, I think the fundamental difference is how long a person can keep their belongings on the site. And this is you show up in the morning, or excuse me, in the evening, and then you depart in the morning. In the current rest stop model or an OVE, their belongings stay there 24/7.
Councillor Clark?
And we won't be changing that?
Not if the ordinance doesn't allow it.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. So I'm going to close I did that already, close the hearing. Last thing this evening that I would like to say is I feel like it would be terrible to have last week go by and not make a comment about all the wayfaring people all over this continent, all over this world. That we saw what happened in Paris. We've seen a lot of horrible things happen for a lot of people that displace them or kill them or cause all kinds of terrible things to happen. And so I guess what I want to say is as we try really hard to deal with our issues here, we hold the people around the world at our hearts who are facing really, really difficult times. And that's Lebanon, that's Paris, that's a whole many places. The world is sort of charged with issues that are very difficult to deal with. But the thing that's really hopeful, last weekend I went to the Habitat for Humanity 52nd building that they built in our area, where they built a home for low-income people who would never have access to owning a home without it. And I thought to myself, that is, we had 4 Rotary groups and Wells Fargo and others involved in that, and I just thought, this thing about how good we can be when we really do it, how good we can be when we really build and try to help people instead of the things we seem to do in the world to destroy each other. So I want to give honor losses, but I want to speak about lifting what's best in humanity. And I think the conversation tonight's a bit about what's best in humanity. So thank you. Good night.